Surprise! A carbon-cutting deal between the planet's worst two polluters, the US and China, raising hopes for next year's climate change summit in Paris. Early in his presidency, Barack Obama, at another ambitious climate change summit, this one in Copenhagen, hit a wall negotiating with the Chinese and the Indians. A second chance now to get it right. We'll look at the deal that's on offer in Beijing. Already environmentalists say they're underwhelmed. While over in Washington, an incoming Republican majority in the Senate has come out guns ablazing against it. You'll hear in a bit from their new leader, who hails from the coal mining state of Kentucky. Then there's the broader question. Yes, we may be in the throes of the hottest year on record, say some scientists, but with economies struggling and the price of oil tumbling, do we really have the resolve to change our fossil fuel-dependent habits? Today in the France 24 debate, we'll see if world leaders can cool the planet. With us to talk about it in our show today, Peter Rowan, consultant in green finance and sustainable energy. Welcome back. Welcome back as well to Jean-Louis Chilansky, who is the president of the Union of French Petroleum Industries. Joining us from Washington, a lot of this argument taking place today, by the way, in the United States. We could say hello to Bruce Stokes of the Pew Research Center, and Myron Ebel, director of the Center for Energy and Environment, a think tank that advocates smaller government and free enterprise. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate. The France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter, our hashtag F24debate. When he touched down in Beijing this week, Barack Obama, it was a bit of a rocky landing. He fenced with his hosts on, let's see, trade, cyber spying, Hong Kong. Then came Wednesday's announcement.
President Xi, his team, and the Chinese government for the commitment they are making to slow, peak, and then reverse the course of China's carbon emissions. Today, I can also announce that the United States has set a new goal of reducing our net greenhouse gas emissions by 26 to 28% below 2005 levels by the year 2025. This is an ambitious goal, but it is an achievable goal.
An ambitious goal? Is it an ambitious goal, Peter Rowan?
Yes, it is ambitious, but it is doable. And that's the main point here. Basically, Barack Obama realizes it is a goal which will take a lot of negotiating and work on the ground, but it can be done.
And were you surprised?
Yes, I was. I wasn't expecting that at all to happen.
So you're saying it can be done, Jean-Louis Chilansky?
Well, I think not only it's doable, but it is smart. It is smart because 2005 is the peak year of CO2 emissions in the United States. And since then, it has been declining for a reason we can talk about. So in fact, the trend is already there. And picking 2005 and setting 2025 as a year of target is a smart way to put it.
Myron Ebel, do you agree?
It's fairly ambitious for the United States. It is an open-ended commitment or a sort of a promise for China that they will try to do better starting in 2030. But I think this plan of President Obama's has very little chance here in the United States Congress.
We'll get to that in a moment. I first want to ask you, when you talk about the Chinese commitment from 2030, are you saying that the United States got the short end of the stick?
Well, I think that the President Obama is very sincere that U.S. emissions should continue to decline at an ever faster rate. What the Chinese have said is we will continue to build many, many coal-fired power plants until 2030 or thereabouts, and then our emissions will have peaked. That's probably just business as usual. Their emissions probably will peak around 2030 regardless of what they do.
All right, let's put that into perspective. China surpassing the United States as the world's largest polluter, 26% of the world's carbon emissions, the U.S. on 16%, by the way, Europe and India on 13 and 6%. There you see the trend. And when you look at energy sources, China gets a full 2/3 of its energy. That's a whopping number compared to the U.S. and the world as a whole from coal. There you see that graph. Peter Rowan, what does that graph inspire you? And do you agree then with Myron Ebel that basically it doesn't ask the Chinese to change much in their energy policy?
No, it doesn't. However, what it does do is that it's actually got China to actually put a date on its emissions and when they're going to reduce, which no one's been able to do up until now. And that's probably the most important part of this agreement, is that China has set a date of 2030. So that's a very important statement.
Jean-Michel Lansky?
Yeah, well, I think for China, as it was said, it may not be a very constraining target. They continue to grow their emissions. That's what they said, and they said by 2030 it should level off, which is probably what would have happened in any case, as it was said. Now it's more of a symbol. It's the first time they are stating such targets. So in that respect, it has some symbolic value. Now, whether it would be constraining to the China economy, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree with that totally. However, you have to also look at that China has a large pollution problem, and they have already said that they're going to start focusing on renewable energies. They're one of the largest producers of photovoltaic solar panels in the world. So there is a shift within the Chinese way of thinking.
There's a shift within the Chinese way of thinking. Some say that the Chinese are way ahead of the U.S. or even Europe when it comes to actually taking renewable energy seriously. You know?
Yes. I mean, and also not only that, there's also development of the Great Green Wall, where they're trying to re-greenify the Gobi Desert, which is encroaching in on China. They've major programs of rerouting water. Some people say that's environmentally sort of not sustainable, but they are trying to do things as they realize there is going to be issues of climate change.
And how much of that is public money in a place like China?
A lot.
What does that inspire to you, Myron Ebel, that the Chinese have been working at this very hard and spending a lot of public money to make that switch to renewables?
A couple of comments. First is the reason Chinese emissions have gone up so dramatically and are now on the verge of being as large as the United States and the European Union together is because the EU and the US have outsourced our energy-intensive manufacturing to China. For example, solar panels, which take a lot of energy to fabricate. So Chinese emissions are essentially a displacement of our emissions in the West. Second, China has so much cash that they can invest in anything they want. You know, they've built 20 or 30 cities that are uninhabited. So yes, okay, they're building a lot of solar panels and windmills, but you know, one of the stories a few years ago was that they were building windmills but weren't connecting them to the grid. So there's a lot of waste there in this supposed transformation.
Jean-Michel Lansky?
Just two comments. One, to put things in perspective. I mean, the emissions of China are absolutely huge. You know, the increase of China's CO2 emission in 6 months is the total of the French emission in 1 year. Okay, let me rephrase that. The French are emitting an amount which represents 6 months of increase in China. So, you know, the potential or the possibilities in China of improving are enormous. And in that respect, that's the second point. It's mostly coal. So if they move to gas for their electricity generation, they've got it done in a way. So the massive amount of emissions and their possibility of switching from coal to gas gives them, apart from renewables, a great amount of improvement possibilities.
All right. And is that a good thing, switching to gas? They're also switching to nuclear power, but...
They are. The nuclear power and the coal, a lot of the stations which they're building are in water stress areas. And this is what I was talking about earlier with the water conditions. And they realize that if there's no water, you can't run a power station. So they have to look at other forms of energy production. Otherwise, as soon as you have blackouts, you get people very, very annoyed. So on the renewable side of things, they also realize there's a lot of employment in this on this area. I mean, I've just been at a conference today at the OECD in Paris, where they were looking at the increases of labour within the green economy. And China is realising there is jobs in this, there is growth. Let's start looking down this road.
Jobs and growth, but the move from coal to gas, is that a good news story?
I would say gas is still a hydrocarbon, and it is still a polluter. No, it's not as large a polluter as coal, but it is still a polluter, and we should be looking beyond that because the costs of implementing green economy on renewable energies and energy efficiency in developing countries is actually cheaper than doing it within the developed
But is it realistic for a place like China to make that leap from coal to renewables without going to gas first?
Yes, it is.
Well, then we differ.
Which is good.
I don't think that leap is doable in the foreseeable future. It will come one day, but gas is the obvious transition energy when you come from 60% of coal, a mix of 60% of coal. Gas would be an not immediate, but would be a medium-term solution to reduce carbon emission while developing renewables, because they won't be able to develop renewables at a stage, at a pace, to replace 60% of coal in the energy mix. Well, that's how I sense it.
All right, comments coming in. One on Facebook from Strange Beat. America is not to be trusted because of their quest for power. China should not trust them because they might have hidden agendas. This, of course, in reference to that pact that was signed on Wednesday in Beijing. We're talking about coal. Republicans quick to fire back at the treaty. Luke Brown has the story.
9 months of secret talks culminating in an historic deal. The world's two biggest polluters agreeing to cut carbon emissions, the US vowing to reduce its emissions by over a quarter by 2025, Beijing meanwhile promising that its greenhouse gases will begin falling from their peak in 2030. For Barack Obama, it means addressing one of his stated priorities over the final 2 years of his term in office. But the US president is unlikely to have it all his own way. Back in Washington, the Republican Party, fresh from its resounding victory in the midterms last week, already sounding a warning.
I was particularly distressed by the deal apparently he's reached with the Chinese on his current trip, which, as I read the agreement, requires the Chinese to do nothing at all for 16 years, while these carbon emission regulations are creating havoc in my state and other states around the country.
That sentiment echoed elsewhere on Capitol Hill. House Leader John Boehner condemning what he called a crusade against affordable energy that would destroy jobs. And the likely next chair of the Senate's Environment Committee, James Inhofe, an avowed climate change denier, has promised to, quote, rein in regulations. Indeed, appeals for bipartisan deal-making are likely to fall on deaf ears. Republicans, furious that Obama has flexed his executive powers for the deal with China, vowing to throw up legislative obstacles. In turn, those measures likely to meet with the presidential veto.
All right, so getting set for a fight on Capitol Hill. On Facebook, Josephine saying the U.S. talks about reducing significantly by 2030, China in 2030. Hey, guys, it's urgent. So somebody there saying we have to speed things up. Peter Rowan, your reaction when you heard Mitch McConnell's remarks there?
Well, for them, the people who vote for them are within the hydrocarbon field. The coal, Kentucky is a big coal producer. He's talking to his electorate. And so this is where, and also the chairman of the environmental panel for the Senate, Ive Huff, he himself, people are saying that he's funded by the hydrocarbon sort of industry as well. So you have to look at where they come from and what they're trying to push, and they want to stay in power.
They want to stay in power. Barack Obama, in this case, can issue stricter regulations by executive order. He doesn't have to go to Congress.
No.
But
even if he goes to Congress, the Democrats will filibust, and it won't get through. I mean, we've seen how the Republicans have worked on the filibustering themselves in the past, where they take half an hour just to walk to the plinth to talk. So these things can be delayed even if it does go through, it goes to the House. So
Late in his presidency, Bill Clinton signed a carbon-reducing deal at Kyoto in Japan. It turned out to be one of the big defeats of his presidency because it was never ratified in Washington. Could we be setting ourselves up for a letdown?
Well, this is an international treaty. It's an agreement between two countries, but it's not a treaty, and that's the difference. It's through the Environmental Protection Agency, and if we all know, that was set up by Nixon, who was another Republican.
Jean-Louis Chenard?
Well, I think reducing the reactions of the Republicans to just local elections seems to me a little bit narrow. I think the issue is that at the moment there is a great economic recovery in the US,
yes,
which is partly fueled, if I may say so, by shale gas and shale oil. And that's not a local issue, it's a national issue. Investment, lower cost of electricity, lower cost of gas, and that's driving the American economy very much ahead.
And if you actually read the agreement, shale is actually part of this agreement.
No, I know, but then one could recognize that there is a genuine concern about these people, about the impact it could have, or what this treaty could have on the American economy. So I don't think the point I'm just making, it's not coal state and oil state and what have you. It's a much broader U.S. issue which they are transmitting, so to speak, and it's a genuine concern.
So are you saying that the Republicans are right? This could be a job-killing agreement?
Well, the issue is whether the targets set by President Obama, are consistent or can be managed within still a growing U.S. economy, and that's different points of view from one and the others. But what I'm just saying is that the concern they are expressing is a real concern. It's not just we don't like it or we don't want it.
All right, where to get your energy is, of course, something we'll be talking about when we come back. Just another remark, this one on Twitter by James. This is all just PR. They have no intention to change anything. Well, we'll put that to our panel when we come back. Stay with us. It's the France 24 debate.